Welcome back, everyone, to Real Management Talk with LJ and Jocelyn. Okay, I'm having one of those days, LJ, because I almost forgot what the name of our show was for a minute there. Oh boy, it's been a week, let me tell you. But I'm learning lots of new tech things, and I'm having fun doing it to a point. But I got to be honest, it has probably been one of the hardest things I've had to learn.
Yeah.
And the other day I said to my husband, anybody who knows me, any of you guys who know me, or even know any of the females and pretty much most of the males in my family, know we like to talk. So the sheer fact that I'm having issues learning how to be on camera, even though like I'm here on camera with you, but like really for something else that I'm doing, and really learning the ways that you have to do that. So in the beginning, I had real slow pitch mode, like, hey, come talk to me, So this was like, oh, get your energy back up like you normally are. Okay. So then that went to what the director called cheerleader mode. Tone that down.
And we're going to talk about this today.
Yeah. How about you just talk to me like you talk to me and you talk to your friends, as I've seen you talk to other people, and why are you having such a problem? So I'm like, I don't know. But I had to, before we get into today's subject, what I wanted to say about that is I had to figure out that it's really a skill. It's a new skill you have to learn. And so even like we're all getting used to things like Zoom here, which is what you and I are using, but we're or other types of and being in meetings and even doing presentations this way and everything. But it's still not the same if you're trying to say you're filming a commercial or you're filming some type of film, or you're doing some type of education, whatever that way. There is literally a different way that you have to be able to talk very conversationally, like you and I are talking, but you also have to be able to keep a certain amount of energy and smiling, and not smiling, but not looking like you're frowning, looking like you're talking and you're happy, and where it's kind of in here. And it really is a skill. I had never thought about it till I started doing this and really learning this new skill. Now I'm determined to master it, but it's and the director and everybody, including my supportive husband, who is not the director, by the way, is telling me that I'm like almost there. So all of you listening for me, just say a prayer. And I'll just finally nail this thing. But something exciting coming out. Well, I'm sure you and I will talk about that later as we get towards the end of the year here. But having said that, I think you've got a great topic today. So what are we talking about?
Yeah. So I think the previous conversation that we had about business as usual being dead was just so timely, and it was so resonant. I think that it's only right for us to follow up with a very real conversation about social capital.
Right.
And for a lot of people who are listening, I want you to think of Bowling Alone by Robert Putnam. There were a lot of good takeaways and good points that were made in that book that, kind of similar to George Orwell's 1984. There's a lot of things that were spoken of in both of those texts that I think today we really can have very resonant and very sort of pointed discussions about where we are and even possibly where we'll be going from this point. So today we're going to talk about social capital because I just think it's right on time, and it's a great follow-up to conducting business unusual.
Yes, I agree. So what is your big takeaway from the Putnam book? Let's start there.
I think with Bowling Alone, if you think back to 30 years ago, I know it's a long time ago for a lot of people, 30, 40 years ago, even. You're thinking about a time where social capital functioned um, relationally rather than so transactionally, right?
Hmm.
Business as usual that was conducted at that point was based really on a lot of trust, a lot of um, family sort of relationships and ties, um, a lot of social capital that individuals built over time periods, right? Over being a part of a certain bowling league, for example,
Hmm.
which was really why Robert Putnam titled his book "Bowling Alone," um, because he wants you to sort of
Right.
visually think about bowling leagues, right?
Right.
A lot of social capital came from those types of activities, from community engagement that was person to person, family to family, and community belongingness, community engagement. And so I think now when we think about communities from a biological standpoint, we're just thinking about, as a species, feeling like we have something in common with someone else, right?
Right.
And that kind of being like the fundamental or the first step to being able to really establish ourselves as belonging in a community. And then thinking about what trust and friendship and humanity and ethics and value systems and things of that, mores, things of that sort, how those things function within that context. So it's almost like our own little ecosystems, right? You think about nowadays, you fast forward from 40 years ago, you look at 2020, what a stark contrast. Social capital is the number of followers now that you have on Facebook. What's your clout? What's your virtual clout? Because a lot of times, unless you're, small town, or possibly even overseas in certain places where everything is not so digitally connected, if you live in places that still allow for you to just kind of, walk walk the block, you can get everything within sort of a 5 mile radius. Everything that you need might be within a 5 or 10 mile radius. Unless you live in a community like that, you think about the United States, most of us live in these large metropolitan statistical areas, these MSAs, and, we have to have cars to get from work to home. We have to have a car to get from home to grocery store so that we can pick up food. We have to have a car in order to, access health services. If we need to get allergy shots, or if we need to get our prescription drugs for, you know, OxyContin or Ritalin, or, other things that we might need prescribed, right? Everything is really dependent on transportation, accessibility, in that sense, in that standpoint. Social capital for us has devolved in so many different ways because we don't really see ourselves as part of communities in the traditional sense anymore. We see ourselves as part of work communities, work related, work specific communities. We see ourselves as part of virtual communities, you
Hmm.
know. And so when you think about social capital isn't as accessible or isn't as transformative, I guess we would say, as what it may have been 40 years ago, where you could, hypothetically, because of your involvement in a bowling league, for example, you
Right.
could hypothetically go and have a sit down with the CEO of a particular business that might be hiring. You might be able to say, hey, we're on the same bowling league. I would love to come and work for your company, and here's what I would request as my starting salary and
Hmm.
benefits package,
Right.
right? Whereas before you had a touch point where, your kids might have gone to the same school together. You might have lived in the same neighborhood, whatever the situation. Nowadays, you have kids that don't go to school I should say, kids that don't go to the same school that live in the same neighborhood.
Oh, yeah. No, that's really true. I think because the choices that we made for our son when he was little, of course, as he's gotten older, we've involved him in those decisions, but most of the time he has not gone school to the same school as some other kids are in the neighborhood. But I think that the social capital, to go back to, um, like with bowling, for instance, like my parents, my grandparents, everybody was on a bowling league. I mean, for years. And I think I practically grew up in a bowling alley when I think about it at different points, because I was there so much between them all bowling and everything. And I actually really like bowling. I'm not very good at it, but I actually like watching bowling competitions, all kinds of stuff. As a side note. But anyway, I was thinking, the thing that crossed my mind is, well, two things. One is where we were living um, for the last several years until we made the move. There was a family that lived next door to us whose oldest child was a year younger than our son. And in the over 4 years we lived next door to each other, the kids never met each other, because every time I would inquire with that mom, she had some reason for why not. They very much sheltered their kids. And I think, that's happened a lot. And what's been really interesting with this move is we've moved into, and it's really new. It's only about 4 years old, so they're building it out. But it's a huge, what we would call master planned community, but it's very specifically designed. So because of that, right, like the grocery store and everything's all in right now, not all the housing, and there's some other stuff that's going to go in and stuff like that. But we already have doctors and healthcare is already available within walking distance, grocery store and banks and stuff within walking distance, gas station within walking distance, several restaurants, hair cutting, everything within walking distance already. And the neighbors around here, they get out and they walk. And I don't think it's just COVID, because based on the ones we've met, they're all like, yeah, maybe someday we're all going to be able to get together again, because we got to stay this far apart and we can't visit each other. And so up until COVID, that is what they were all doing. And I thought to myself, oh my gosh, I didn't even realize how much I had missed that, from going from a really large, moving back to a really large city, and then moving back more into, a smaller city that has pockets. It's still spread out enough, but, I was thinking when you were talking about, yeah, pretty much everything we need is within within a 5-mile radius. And just, we had lived in some communities over the years that were a lot more like this, and I just hadn't realized how much I missed, like just having a conversation. Hi, how are you doing? Even if you didn't really stop to talk, you have a sense of who lives next door to you, who do they have kids? Well, apparently here this is becoming like quite the retirement mecca. So are they grandparents? Do they, so it seems like in this community, you either have really young families that have like really little ones, or you have grandparents. There's not many of us who are kind of in between, but that's okay. But it's just that sense of community again, and yeah.
Because that's why, this is what, and I'm happy that you said that, because when you think about social capital functions that way. You are going to be able to leverage or access things that you need a lot quicker, with less red tape, with less bureaucracy, with less hassle, because the banker, the banks in the community, them, because the police officer. The police officer, there's probably a residential police officer. They're going to see the same person. It's the same beaten path, right? The postman or postwoman, you're going to know that postal worker, right? Because it's the same postal worker that's assigned to that territory. That's your social capital. You can't build social capital if you don't have a community that which you belong in. But then also, if you don't actually have the access to leverage resources, well, I would say leverage trade. Yeah. It's about exchange. It's a marketplace. And you want to be able to trade and barter without necessarily having to always come out of pocket with cash. Sometimes it's just, hey, we're a neighbor. We're going to do something nice or kind for you because you're a neighbor, because you're a part of my community.
Exactly.
And how do you do something kind for someone that you don't know?
It's so important. And to come back as we wrap this up, and I'm sure we're going to probably end up doing a lot longer episode on this because there's a lot more to unpack in this. But, to your point where we're talking about starting in the beginning with the followers, I think the big thing that everybody needs to keep in mind, especially if you're in business, is this. It doesn't matter how many followers you have at all. Because if you're not converting those followers to cash, they're just simply that. It might make you feel good to look at the numbers. So you might get that, as we do. And let's admit it, we all look at the numbers and go, hoo-hoo! Like, I think we got like 2 more people following the Real Management Talk Facebook page yesterday when I was looking at the numbers. And, you get that instantaneous dopamine rush on that thing. But what I'm getting at is, if you're not converting them somehow, you can have 1 million followers, but if you're not making a dime off of that as a business, then, it doesn't matter. It really doesn't.
It's about creating value. It's artifice, because most of those likes and most of those subscribers that we, as Jocelyn was saying, we want them, of course, but a lot of them are bots. Okay, these are not even real people. So at the end of the day, you can't have these dopamine rushes that are based on artifice. You need to have something a little bit more substantive, and the substance comes in when, like Jocelyn's saying, you're able to convert those likes and those follows and those subscriptions into a community. Like, these have to be community members who have something that they would like to exchange with you. It is relational. What we're trying to build here is very much relational. But part of being kind is recognizing that there is a transaction attached to kindness. If I'm going to go, and Jocelyn does it for me all the time. If Jocelyn does such great work, she helps me out with A, I'm going to turn around and help her out with B, C, D, E, F, just because she did A for me, right? It's not necessarily transactional because I'm matching her 1 for 1. I'm just saying, because you did something for me, you didn't have to do that. No one owes you anything. No one owes me anything, right? If you do something for me, I'm going to return that in kindness, right?
Exactly.
It's very transactional from that perspective, but it's more so relational than anything. And that's what we're talking about here. That's what social capital is built on. Relational, transactions, or I should say relational exchanges that are really based in kindness and reciprocity.
Yeah.
They
are. And I know that we'll probably have way more to say on this subject one way or another. Right? Well, it's been a great talk today. We are definitely just getting started, and but we're going to see you on our next episode, which so this is episode 20. Wow, this is episode 20.
Amazing.
So, yeah, it's amazing. We've been doing this for a while, and it's the other side is we'll probably have a talk on just starting something and just sticking with it and keep going too. Because there is a social capital to this too, guys. So, and we'll talk about that later on too. But hey guys, it's been a pleasure. We're so happy that you're here and that you're listening to us. And as always, if you have comments, questions, thoughts on subjects, want to tell us how good or how bad we're doing, well, we got to be willing to take the bad with the good. And if somebody has constructive, we would like constructive criticism though, guys. Constructive, please. We welcome all thoughts.
Nothing about our hair. I don't want to hear anything about our hair.
Yeah, no, please. Please. Although I think I did halfway decent with mine today. This is the problem with me letting it grow out, but that's a whole different subject for that might be our New Year's episode, you know.
Right.
Our put it out there episode. Someday we'll do that episode, guys. I can't promise we'll do it this year. All right. We will catch you all later. Bye.
Bye.